the most beloved attractions of all time. For nearly 30 years, up to 60,000 guests per day rode through the skies of Tomorrowland on the People.
We all have our influences. This video playing behind me is what influenced me to start my YouTube channel. It's by JustinScarred. He's a fantastic Disney YouTuber. He does other stuff, Route 66 a while ago. Go check it out. I'm going to link him in the description down below because he is what inspired me to create this offhand Disney channel. Everyone gets inspired in some way, shape, or form. Even Walt Disney himself when he was trying to build a place where parents and kids could have fun together. Disneyland is not its own creation. It takes pieces of different theme parks from all over the world, not just the US. Heck, it even takes inspiration from a theme park right there in Anaheim next door. And so today I thought we'd peel back the layers of Disneyland to see what inspired the original Magic Kingdom that went on to inspire all the other Magic Kingdoms around the world. This is a story not of one park, but of many parks, and how their individual stories went on to influence the way the theme park industry has evolved to this very day. This, everybody, are the influences behind Disneyland. This is what made Disneyland the park that it is today, and I hope you enjoy. Oh, it's a good video, right? We all have our inspirations. I do, and I would hope you do as well. And like I said, Walt Disney had his own when creating Disneyland. And that's not just sitting on a bench near the Griffith Park carousel and thinking there should be a place where everyone can be having fun at the same time instead of just those two little ones. No, the dream for Disneyland began way before this. Back to Walt Disney's early childhood, in fact. Dating back to when Walt was just a little child in Marceline, Missouri and Kansas City, he lived near rail lines. And living near trains gave Walt this idea of adventure. You could hop on one of these trains and travel all across America. He even had a job on a train for a short time, selling things like cigarettes and candy to people on commuter cars. I mean, everyone knows that Walt Disney loved trains, and something that remained constant in the plans for Disneyland, in whatever incarnation you choose, is the fact that a steam locomotive would trace the outside perimeter of the park. From a miniature train that would give guests a tour around the Walt Disney Studios to eventually Mickey Mouse Park, and then what became Disneyland. And it would go on to exist at other parks around the world like Disneyland Paris and Hong Kong Disneyland, even the Walt Disney World Railroad, which hasn't been up and running for years at this point. I don't even remember what it was like. They all remain as Walt's most enduring personal legacy in the Disney parks. Sure, the Haunted Mansion may be the best ride ever created by Disney, but the Disneyland Railroad exists at Disneyland purely because Walt wanted it to, for his own enjoyment and the enjoyment of others, to kind of peek into his life of train enthusiasm. I would also have to be dumb to continue on without talking about the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad in Walt's old backyard. After being injured in a particularly wild polo game, Walt decided that he needed a more relaxational hobby. And after seeing both mini and full-size railroads built by people who worked at his studio, like Ollie Johnson and Ward Kimball, Walt decided that he would make his own miniature railroad in his massive backyard in California. In 1949, he purchased 5 acres of land in Los Angeles, which, I mean, wow. He had purchased this land to build his family a brand new home, but more importantly to Walt, a brand new mini railroad. He named the land behind where his house would go Yen Sid Valley, which of course is Disney spelled backwards, and a reference to which you can still find on Runaway Railway at Hollywood Studios today. That's just the beginning though. This ride contains many references to Walt's love of trains. The years following Walt's death, different parts and cars from the Carrollwood Pacific would be distributed throughout the United States and the Disney Company. Some cars would end up at Disneyland, some at the Walt Disney Family Museum, some at Walt Disney World, and of course, some in the hands of private collectors. But I could talk all day about Walt Disney's love of trains and its influences on the Disney parks, but that would be better for a whole different video. Hey. Kermit, write that down. Let's talk now about specific theme parks or amusement parks from Walt Disney's youth that went on to inspire the happiest and most magical places on Earth. 2 different places, I should add. Now, just a second ago, I mentioned Walt Disney growing up in Kansas City, and there was an amusement park in Kansas City, Missouri that Walt Disney visited when he was a child. This vacation destination of the world, or, of Kansas City, Missouri, was called Electric Park. This park had band concerts, vaudeville, electric fountains, ballrooms, naturatoriums, German villages, alligator farms, chutes, dip coasters, Norton slides, penny parlors, novelty stands, Japanese rolling balls, scenic railways, pool room, and Hale's tour of the world, whatever that is. Hold on, I'm getting something in my earpiece here. It's saying that Hale's tour of the world was actually a very early precursor to simulator rides that would simulate a train tour around the world. People back then really loved trains. And Walt's family lived just 15 blocks away from the park. I'm sure many of you watching who grew up around Disneyland can understand why Walt was hanging around this park so often. And something unique about Electric Park is that it was always meticulously cleaned. Something that set it apart from the Coney Islands or the Luna Parks of the day, which were always for some reason extremely dirty and stinky. The use of electric light bulbs, hence the name, was a big draw to people who wanted to visit and see all the twinkling lights in the trees and on the buildings at night. Sound familiar? And just like another place we all know and love, Electric Park would end the day with a fireworks spectacular. If you ask me, it's clear we're a very clean theme park that lit up at night and ended the day with a fireworks show went on to influence Walt with the way Disneyland was run. Electric Park itself was inspired by the Columbian Exposition that opened in 1893, often cited by many as being one of the best and most influential World's Fairs of all time. You know, right up there with the 1964 World's Fair for me. And just looking at pictures of the thing, yeah, that's impressive. But Walt has a very long history of World's Fairs, not just the 64-65 World's Fair, but also, and this is going to sound very familiar, the 1933 Chicago World's Fair, all about a century of progress. Progress, you say? At this point, Walt Disney was a bit more accomplished, and by a bit, I mean he was world-renowned for the creation of Mickey Mouse and the Silly Symphony cartoons, and he had won an Academy Award. Nothing to scoff at here. 2 months after releasing The Three Little Pigs, Walt arrived in Chicago and visited the World's Fair. And what he found there, I think, went on to influence the way he thought about progress for the rest of his life. The futuristic architecture, precursors to the modern-day monorail, and even the Homes of Tomorrow exhibit all inspired Walt later on in life. Things you can see in these pictures from the fair went on to directly influence things at Disneyland, like the monorail, as I said, the Carousel of Progress, of course, and by extension things like Epcot. And Epcot. I mean, just look at this picture of the fair and then look at this picture of Epcot and tell me it doesn't seem to be a little bit similar. It influenced a lot of Tomorrowland at Disneyland and things like the Monsanto Hall of Chemistry. It all seems to be taken right from the Century of Progress fair. And now, thanks to those early innovations at Disneyland, we have things like the Walt Disney World monorail system, audio animatronics that are electric instead of pneumatic or hydraulic, and the entirety of New Future World coming to Epcot, which feels like it's going to be a true permanent World's Fair, finally. Something that celebrates not just technology, but also humanity. But we're going to shift again, going back in time some more, way back to before Walt was even born, and across the ocean to Europe. Ooh, how exotic. And more specifically to a place called Tivoli. Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen, Denmark opened in 1843, 177 years ago. Wow. And is still actually operating today, and it does very well. Moving ahead to 1951, the very, very early planning stages for Disneyland, Walt and his friend Art Linkletter, who you may know from the Disneyland opening day broadcast, would visit Tivoli. Art said that Walt would spend his time walking around and writing down details about everything from the rides to the food, the lights, and the seats of the rides. Tivoli was very nearly a perfect theme park, and Walt Disney wanted to make Disneyland the perfect theme park. Walt said that he was making notes of something he's always dreamed of, a great, great playground for the children and families of America. Walt would later describe Tivoli as spotless, brightly colored, and priced within the reach of everyone. You know, like Disneyland is today. But the most important influence Tivoli had on Disneyland was something that its founder, George Carstensen, said, specifically about his design philosophy for the park. He said simply that Tivoli will never, so to speak, be finished. Something that Walt Disney echoed the sentiments of when he said, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. And in the case of both parks, the statements are true to this day. And now onto one final piece of Disney Disney history that went on to inspire what would become Disneyland. This one built not by millionaires in Chicago, but by a man in Florida who was just a big fan of Disney. After Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs hit theaters in 1937, a man named Alfred Nippert became such a big fan that he wanted to build his own version of a Snow White cottage. The cottage was built in Gamble Place in Florida, named after its founder of Procter & Gamble fame, James Gamble. So if you use Crest toothpaste, this story applies to you. Gamble Place was where James Gamble would go with his family to relax during the winter months. James's daughter, Maud, would go on to marry Alfred Nippert, the guy who built the Snow White cabin, only to tragically pass away a few years later. You keeping up with me here? Alfred was grief-stricken, but he would find solace in Walt Disney's first feature film animation. And upon setting out to build a fairy tale, Snow White influenced cabin in Gamble Place, it eventually turned into a full recreation of Snow White's cottage from the movie. Walt would visit the recreation in the late 30s and would see, for more or less the very first time, scenes from his animated cartoons represented in real life. Now, looking at the outside of the cottages side by side, it's a little hard to see any resemblance, but when you go inside, the stairs and the fireplace and all the dwarves' beds from the movie are there inside the house. And who knows, maybe when Imagineers were designing Snow White's cottage for the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train at the Magic Kingdom, they went back to the original source. It's a very big maybe, but you know, there's always a chance. So whether it's visions of the future or sparkling lights illuminating the nighttime sky, a steam locomotive circling a theme park, or a cabin that stepped right out of the silver screen, the philosophy and original design of Disneyland were not just thought up by Walt Disney on a whim someday when he wanted to build a theme park. The man liked to do his research, and he took pieces from theme parks and places all over the world to help build his perfect Disney park. And now when you look down Main Street USA at Disneyland or peer up at the spires of Batuu at Hollywood Studios, you know that there's influences behind the way these things are designed. Without Walt Disney visiting Electric Park in Kansas City as a child, we may not have the illuminated Main Street USA. Without the 1939 New York World's Fair, we may not have the amazing architecture that you can find at Epcot. And I didn't even talk about the 1939 World's Fair. That's gonna be another video. Kermit, I need you again. Write that down. And maybe, without the Santa Fe Railroad running through Kansas City when Walt Disney was a child, we may never have gotten Disneyland as we know it today. What a scary alternate universe that would be. And so that, everybody, is what inspired Walt Disney when he was building Disneyland. Not just him, though. All the Imagineers who helped him on the parks, they all take little pieces from their lives and put it into their work. Just like I do into my work. Huh. Interesting. Makes you wonder if there's any offhand Disney references at Disneyland. I will be right back. Hi everybody, thank you so much for watching this video about influences Walt Disney took into consideration and then put into Disneyland. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you all can find a little bit of inspiration in this video. However you decide to use that inspiration, yeah, who knows. And now I'd like to take a break and talk about the people who inspire me the most, my Patreon patrons. They help keep the channel up and running through thick and thin, storm or shine, rain or shine? How does that saying go? Either way, they are all there for me when that happens. And if you'd like to be part of that very important and special group, head over to the link in the description down below. Even just $1 gets you early access to episode audio, and sometimes previews to entire videos when they go live. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you all in the next one, which is going to be about ducks. Goodbye.